Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is going to be a reading recap for the month of November 2022. If you're interested in seeing what books I read in November and how I rated them, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, today's video is going to be a reading recap for November 2022. I think this video is going to post before my December 2022 TBR, but I did film that video before I filmed this one, and I said in that video how I was going to try to film in front of my Christmas tree because I figured it was a pretty background. I'm doing that again with this video here. Hopefully it'll still be up so that I can do it with my December reading recap as well. I do want to start out with talking about a book that I read in October. So if you watched my October reading recap, you'll know that I posted it or filmed it a little bit early because I went on vacation at the end of October, and at the time of filming it, I was in the middle of reading The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. First Erin Sterling book I've ever read. First book I've ever read that was like Halloween themed or meant to be kind of like focused or centered around Halloween. And I was only a little ways into it when I filmed the video, but I was really enjoying it. No, that's a lie. I think I was like a decent amount of the way through it. And I do have to say, I ended up really, really liking this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. I was so happy that I read it. And I kind of like wanted to pick up her other book. I think it's called The X Hex, like right after I read this, but I couldn't. And I figured it would be something to look forward to reading next October. So definitely want to read more from Erin Sterling because I really enjoyed The Kiss Curse. Also, I'm filming like on a really yucky day. It has been raining, like pouring all day long. And because I'm kind of have turned the way that I'm filming so that you can see the Christmas tree, I'm not like facing a window. Like usually this window over here is in front of me when I'm filming, and so I get really nice light from it. So now with this one and with my October TBR video, because I'm facing a different direction, I have like lights on in my living room. So I'm not sure how the lighting is gonna look. It might look a little janky, and that's okay. We'll just figure it out and deal with it. um, but I'm actually filming during the day, but it's so dark out because the weather is not great. I am going to be using my B. Harris Archer and Olive collab notebook to reference during this video. This is my reading journal. This thing is stuffed up. She is so stuffed. But yeah, this is my reading journal for 2022, and I will be referencing this as we're talking about the books that I ended up reading in November. The first book that I read in November is The Match by Sarah Adams. So I got this off of Amazon, and actually since purchasing this off Amazon, I know that Sarah Adams has had like a lot of difficulty with some of her like self-published books. Sarah Adams wrote The Cheat Sheet. That was the first book that I read by her. She just recently released When in Rome. I read that one in October. I loved both of those books, and I was very eager to pick up more books from her. And so I did order this book and the one I'll talk about next off Amazon. And she went through this whole thing where like all of her books got taken off Amazon. I think they're all back on Amazon now, but that's really the only place you can kind of find some of her older, more independently published books. So I was really glad that I picked this one up. I went on vacation, like I said, at the end of October. I was on vacation the entire first week of November, and so I wanted to bring a couple of books with me that were going to be kind of light, easy reads, and this seemed perfect for that. So I ended up bringing this. I read this, I finished this while I was on vacation, and I absolutely loved it. I ended up giving this 5 out of 5 stars. It was so, so cute. I loved everything about it. I loved the characters. I loved I don't know, it was just such a sweet romance. The main character has a chronic illness. That was a really interesting twist. The male main character has a child. That was a really interesting storyline. You don't get that a lot in a lot of romances, and I've actually enjoyed that when I've read that single parent situation in romances. So really, really enjoyed this one. And then next, I went into another book by Sarah Adams called The Enemy. So these two books are actually considered, I guess, kind of like a duology. Basically, one of the side characters from the first book is the main character in The Enemy. And so I started this while I was on vacation, and I ended up finishing it like the day I got back from vacation because it sucked me in and I like was absolutely loving it. Definitely a totally different kind of vibe. This one was more of like an enemies to lovers, but also like a little bit of like childhood enemies to adult lovers kind of a thing, which is really cool. Thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it, and it ended up giving this 4.5 stars. Next, we have a book that is a newer release. This is something that I have been looking forward to since I read the first book in the series. It is different than a lot of the things that I've read this year. And so when it came out, I had to go to the bookstore and get it. And that is The Atlas Paradox by Olivie Blake. So I read The Atlas 6 earlier this year. Honestly, not even that long ago. I think I read it over the summer, and it definitely took me a little bit to get into, but overall, I ended up really enjoying it. It's to me, it's kind of like light fantasy, but it's also kind of like dark academia vibes. And it's just really interesting the dynamics between the characters. And when I finished that book, I knew that another one was coming out, and I was like, oh my gosh, I wish it was out already because I would have like jumped into reading that right away. So when this came out, I picked it up, wanted to read it right away. Really, really enjoyed this as well. It definitely, to me, at some points got almost a little bit. I think there was like a couple points there where I was like, okay, kind of, can we just like move along a little bit? It felt like it almost got a little dull or maybe a little confusing, but overall, I did really enjoy the story. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really, really liked it. I don't see how there could not be another book in this series. Who knows how long that's going to take to write and come out, but I want there to be another book in the series. This does not seem resolved at all to me. I need this to be resolved though. So, yeah, really enjoyed this. I'm so happy I picked it up and read it. Next, I'm going to talk about the book that was my October book for my Instagram challenge. I talk about my Instagram challenge a lot. Basically, I asked people on Instagram to recommend books to me, and for 2022, from April through December, I had one book a month recommended by someone on Instagram that I wanted to read. The book for October was The Whisper Man by Alex North, and I did not get around to reading it, unfortunately. So I wanted to make the effort to do so. So it was one of the books that I wanted to kind of hop into fairly quickly in the month of November. I actually was planning on reading it right after I finished the match, but the Atlas Paradox, like I just couldn't. I had to read this right away. So, right after I finished the Atlas Paradox, I started this, and unfortunately, I ended up DNFing it. And the reason I didn't DNF it because I wasn't enjoying it. It's a mystery thriller. I have enjoyed the mystery thrillers that I've read this year for the most part. I did run into one, the guest list, in the month of October that was just kind of meh for me. And then I read The House Across the Lake, which I enjoyed, but the ending was just kind of a little eh. Um, like the twist was a little eh. So I wanted to read a mystery thriller and get into one and get excited about one and really like one. The reason I stopped reading this is because it actually was like freaking me out and like creeping me out to the point where I felt like I was gonna have like nightmares if I kept reading it. I actually only got 50 pages in, I think. And basically like I would read a little bit of it and I was into it, but it was like scaring me. And so I would stop reading it and then I would pick it up again and read a little bit and then it would like I'd have to put it aside because it was like freaking me out too much. And I think a big part of that is because it has to do with children. And a big thing in the book is that there are, in the past, there have been multiple children that have been murdered in the town where this takes place in, and I think I couldn't get into that. It was like freaking me out too much, and so I ended up DNFing it. The next book that I read in November was actually my November read for my Instagram challenge. This was recommended. Let's see if I could find my Instagram challenge spread in my planner, because then I can tell you exactly who recommended it to me. Where is it? Here it is. So this was recommended to me by at L Bosser 41. I'm probably saying that completely wrong, but that's who recommended Lessons in Chemistry to me. And I had seen it before it was recommended to me, so I was really glad that it got recommended to me. I mean, look at that cover. Like, that's such a good cover of a book. I was definitely intrigued by the cover, so when somebody recommended it, I was like, perfect, I'll get to read it this year. And I'm so glad that it was recommended and that I did get to read it this year, because I absolutely love this. I did not have any idea what it was about going into it. I really do try to go into books blind. This was so unique and interesting. Okay, sorry, I did have to pause the video for a second. I'm actually filming this while my mom is home. I live with my mom, and I try not to film when she's home just because it's like weird, and I don't want to like make it seem like she has to be quiet so that I can film something. But she is home now, and she was having a coughing fit, and I know you could definitely hear that in the audio, so I paused for a second. But we were talking about Lessons in Chemistry and how awesome this book is. I absolutely love this. It definitely had very like loud and out there feminist energy to it, which I was totally behind. I think if you're not really into that, that's you may not enjoy this book as much, but I love that. I also love the narration. You get the inner monologue of every character, not just the main character. So you hear her thoughts, her daughters, her neighbors, her dogs, people she works with. It's super, super interesting. Really, really great read. It made me happy. It made me sad. I laughed. I cried. And I'm so, so glad I read it. And it is something that I rated 4.5 stars, but I feel like it's like this close to being a 5-star read. So the last book that I ended up reading in November is one that I've had for a little while, and I've definitely seen a lot on Instagram, heard a lot about on BookTube, and just hadn't gotten around to. And after reading like The Atlas Paradox and Lessons in Chemistry, I did really want to dive into a romance, and I was pretty sure this was a romance. And so I ended up picking up Funny You Should Ask. This was such a cute one. Really interesting premise. It has a before timeline and a current timeline. That's something that I really enjoy in books, when they have two separate timelines. So I really liked that. You do only get one character's perspective in this, but I was okay with that. And it was a quick read. It was an easy read. It sucked me in. I really enjoyed it. And I think it's kind of what I needed. Overall, I feel like even though I really enjoyed the books that I read in November, after having to DNF The Whisper Man, I was kind of like worried I was going to get into some type of slump just before the end of the year. And so reading Lessons in Chemistry and enjoying that so much, and then reading this one and having it be just such a fun, quick read, really like got me back on track, I feel like. And so really, really enjoyed this, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. And that is it for the books that I read in November 2022. If you read any of these books, please don't hesitate to give your spoiler-free thoughts down below. And if you have any book recommendations for me, I am always open to book recommendations. As always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.